Bonjour mes amis, hi guys. What a treat today after work as I was waiting for my bus. I did my usual little peek around the shops across the street in the Prince building here in Hong Kong, and I was admiring this watch in the Vacheron Constantin window, and the very kind and helpful salesman waved me in to come and discover the watch. It is the Vacheron Constantin Les Historiques, Corne de Vache, 1955. Corne de Vache means cow horns, and as you can see from the lugs, it has that quirky feature, probably inspired by what the watchmakers in the 50s would see out of their window in beautiful Switzerland. You might remember Hodinkey had commissioned Vacheron to reissue this watch a couple of years back, I think, in steel, and it was a limited edition that was sold out immediately because it is a beloved design by watch collectors and aficionados. Inside, you have the descendant of the famous Le Mania 2320 caliber, the same one that powered the Omega caliber 321 that went to the moon, and a caliber that you only find in the very best chronographs from the very best brands. That is Patek, Roger Dubuis, Ulysse Nardin, and Breguet as well have used it. Famously, Patek puts it in the 5070. Patek and Vacheron slightly modify them. Probably the Patek version is a bit more accomplished. But here, Vacheron finishes it beautifully and has the Geneva hallmark seal on the movement. It is actually caliber 1142, a slight evolution of what they were doing before in the historic collection when it was caliber 1141. It used to beat at 18,000 beats per hour. Now it's 21,600. Still the same bicompax format with the seconds on the left and half hour minute register on the right. Now the watch, absolutely stunning. It comes on one of the most beautiful straps I've ever seen. It's a calf strap, of course, tying up with the cow design of the lugs, the cow horns design, and it has a slight sunburst effect, nicely bolstered and substantial. And on the wrist, this 38.5 millimeter watch is just perfection on my 17 millimeter wrist. Now this is the steel version, and the dial, while on pictures and at some angles you would look, the minute track looks like it is white. It is actually light blue over the rest of the silver dial. So there's a great play with the lights on this watch. It's a very playful watch, and not as serious as the yellow gold version that I also saw in the shop, and which comes on a darker leather strap, brown leather strap, with a more simple dial, and it looks a lot more old-fashioned, probably more in tune with the 1955 versions of the watch. Now, obviously, this watch is not cheap. Those the watches using that movement typically retail around $40,000, which is the case here. It's a bit more for the gold version, and quite a lot more for the platinum version. Now, if you're a wealthy aficionado, this is the watch for you, and I would personally love to own this watch. Now, back to earth for the more affordable version, but still produced by Vacheron. I would advise you to look into the historic collection model, same line of watches from the past, from the early 90s to the early 2000s, where reference 47101 and then early 2000 became 47111, was the reinterpretation of chronograph from the 40s and 50s of Vacheron, but using the same Le Mania movement. Back then, as I mentioned earlier, it was reference 1141, beating at a slower beat rate of 18,000 beats per hour. But still, it is the same architecture of the movement, very well finished. Not the very best, perhaps, but very well finished Geneva Seal movement. And that reference is smaller, 36 millimeter, and has beautiful old-fashioned teardrop lugs. So it's really a watch for the aficionados again. And on the second-hand market, the more common yellow gold version, you can find it around $10,000 to $16,000 depending on the condition. I saw one here at $13,000, naked, so no box, no papers. The thing is, service will cost you upwards of $1,000, and $1,500 certainly if you send it to Vacheron. So you have to be careful buying those, but still, the Le Mania movement have been to the moon and back several times. And it's not a watch that you're gonna wear every day anyway. It's more a watch for the boardroom or for a doctor. You might even sometimes use the chronograph. Now, speaking of which, this current version, the 1955 Corne de Vache, the chronograph pushers are one of the best I've ever tried. Just the right resistance, but it's not that heavy click that you have from the Omega Moon watch, for example. Just enough of a mechanical feel, but not too squishy, and I found it very precise. A real delight to use them. So let me know what you think in the comments about this watch. I'm sure many would love to own this. I certainly would. But $30,000 or $40,000, it's a bit out of my price range, especially after buying a longer annual calendar, which is a more useful day-to-day watch that I use at the office every day. This here is really a different kind of budget and a different kind of level of a collector that we're talking about. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation, and I encourage you to obviously look into that Hodinky article about the watch that they had commissioned, but also the Blog to Watch article from which I got a few of the pictures here and many of the information about the second-hand yellow gold 47101 reference that I just spoke about. All right. Speak to you soon. Au revoir.
You need to have both.
Congratulations, you can get two in a one pudding. It's hard to.
Will you make it 2 for 1?
No, if I can, I hope. I like this movement so much.